welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Jessica from Syosset Library's podcast, Turn the Page, and I am here with the author, Ashley Elston, about the book, The First Lie Wins. Just a little bit of background. I called it The Last Lie, like when I first started recording. So if I'm laughing, it's because I'm laughing at myself, because for some reason I just completely messed up the intro originally. I apologize, Ashley. This book was really, really good, though. I will say, it had a lot of twists and turns. I could not put it down. I really, really enjoyed the characters, and I think it's absolutely the type of book that people are going to just devour. So why don't you tell us about The First Lie Wins, and also just about yourself and your journey as an author?
Yes, no, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I'm Ashley. Honestly, I think Last Law Wins. That's kind of got a cool like that. Where could we go with that idea?
I mean, there's a lot of lies in this book.
I mean, the first one, the last one, they're all good.
Yeah, the middle one is fine too.
The middle one is fine too. So so Ashley Elston, the author of First Law Wins, and First Law Wins is my first adult. I guess my debut adult thriller. I have 6 YA books, previously published, but this is my first foray into adult. So First Law Wins follows a woman who has worked for her mysterious boss for the last 10 years under various aliases. But, a past mistake begins to catch up with her, and she realizes that she may be in a little bit more trouble than she thought. So she's a con artist, and having to decide if she's, on the job or if there's a job being pulled on her.
I love books about con artists. I think that there is a lot of fun ground with them. And I really liked Evie as a main character. Evie Evelyn Porter is the name that she's using when we first meet her in the con that she is first pulling off when we meet her, but actually is not the first con she's ever pulled, which is becoming the theme of this podcast. But she's a really interesting character. She's very resourceful, and she is set up with this Mark Ryan Sumner, who he's wealthy. He has a tight-knit group of friends who would probably kill for him. And she needs to infiltrate his life in a way that we will eventually understand why. And she's doing it as you mentioned, she had a previous con that maybe did not go the way that she nor her boss were hoping it would go. So in a way, she's set up with this challenge, but the question is also, has she been set up to fail? And then something happens that I don't want to say because it was a big twist and I really liked it. And, I thought I knew the direction the book was going in. And then when this other thing happened, I realized I didn't. And that's what made me so happy about it. Because when you read a lot of thrillers, sometimes I like to say, like, you're hiding behind the corners and you're pretty sure you know what's coming. And when it doesn't, it just makes it all that much better. So you're a writer of YA books. What made you feel that this was the time to take a leap into adult? And where did Evie come from?
Yeah, so I was not a conscious decision to move to adult. I had my 6 YAs, 4 of them are mystery thrillers. 2 are rom-coms. The rom-coms kind of came out of left field. I had an idea for one, and I just started writing it, even though I felt, well, this is really sort of outside of, what I typically do or what my readers may be looking for. So then when I had this idea, First Law Wins, it wasn't the first time I had sort of strayed from what I had done. And so I kind of took it the same way I took the rom-com idea, and I was like, well, don't typically write adult characters, but this feels good. It feels special. Like, this is what I want to write, and let's just see what happens. And I kind of gave myself that freedom to try something new.
Yeah, it was really, really good. And when you say that you've written rom-coms before, it's funny because now I'm like looking at this, I'm like, if this went in a completely different way, it could have been a rom-com, right?
Right. And I wanted it to be fun. I mean, I wanted you to sort of be, worried about what was really going on and, that, threat of death and, those sort of things. But I also wanted parts of it to be just fun and a little bit, kind of maybe soapy, dramatic, just all the things. I just wanted all the things.
Well, you got all the things in it. And I think one of the things that you did really well, I know that I'd mentioned you had a very appealing main character, but it was very well layered. And you also surrounded her with very interesting characters too. Um, as one might expect in a thriller, especially one about a con artist, not all the people around Evie are who you would think they would be either. Did you kind of see everything coming as you were writing it? Did you know who everybody was as they hopped on the page, or did anybody sort of pull a fast one on you while you were writing and steal a scene from you and take the book in a different direction?
Um, yes. I mean, like I left myself open, to a lot of like left turns. And so, when I started the book, it's sort of like a kind of I had a vague idea of where I was going. And then the first time I was like, well, let me write how she started. And I couldn't decide if I was actually going to put it in the book or if it was more of like a writing exercise for me to like discover more about my own character. So I, wrote a scene, from Evie's past, and I was like, oh, I really like that. And I really like what I can get across in these scenes that would work well for the present day. And so then I was like looking for those opportunities, like where could I show something from the past? And then who are the characters in there? And so then it kind of just became like, my first draft I always say is very bare bones, it's the skeletal system, right? And so you have characters like Devin and you just don't know much about him. And then when I kind of go through a second time and I now know the part he's going to play, then we're building the muscle and putting a little the fat on, right? And then sort of building it up. And then by the time, the third and fourth round, however many rounds you have to go, then I'm able to really flesh them out because I have, yeah, I know what they are, but I don't know what they are at the beginning. I have a vague idea. So it's a weird process for me, but that's my process.
So, like, one of the things that I really like about the type of writing that you're talking about is that basically, it's like you're kind of discovering things as the characters are. And it's funny because, I've said this a bunch of times on this podcast, like some people call that, like being a plotter or a pantser. I've heard the term discovery writer, which I actually really, really like. I call it MacGyver writer because
Oh, I
it's
have
like,
never heard that, but I like it.
thank you. So like
Yes,
I mean I call it a MacGyver writer because it's like in my mind it's like you're going along this with your characters and like you said, like that something's going to happen. So it's like you have to figure out where the bombs are going to go off, or
yes,
that there are bombs that are going to go off, but you're figuring out, like, they show up with your character and then you have to figure out how to diffuse them with your character. And
yes.
that is again, discovery writer. I'm trying to remember exactly what author used that term for me, but it's like, you have, as you said, you have the bones of this story, you have, and you're building up the muscle and the fat, but in order to do it, you sort of have to trust your characters and you have to trust the path that they're going to take you on that are going to lead you through that. And I think that's one of the reasons I really like thrillers specifically is because you do feel like you're taking that blind step into the world. I mean, Evie is a very streetwise character, but she's also in a very dangerous business. And you find out through some of the background stories of previous cons and how she got started, that she's not one that is going to shy away from making choices that are dangerous,
Mhm.
but she might not always be able to defuse that bomb. You know, I mean, there is always the last, I don't want to say the last lie again, but you know,
Right.
that last step that you might take where everything just explodes and you really have conned for the last time, be it because your mark figures it out, or be it because you became overconfident and you thought you had this con artist business down and you're in over your head because the people you
Right.
work for are more dangerous than you thought, or at least you thought
Right.
you could handle. So that's one of the things that I really liked about this story, was that it really did keep you invested. And she was a really, really good and interesting character. And there are two major events that happen. Again, I don't want to say what they are because they are huge spoilers. The first one that happened was the first time I was like, oh, wait, this is going in a different direction. I love it. And then another thing happens. And then I was
Yes.
like, but what?
Yes.
I
Yes.
loved it. And it was fun. I mean, so are you yourself a thriller reader?
I am, and I like to read lots of things, and people have asked me like, what did I grow up reading, and I laugh and I say, Mom, I was a big reader, and my mother was too, and so growing up in high school, and I'm going to age myself, but it's not like you had all the streaming and all the TV stuff, so she had a full bookcase, and it was either romance books or they were thrillers, and so I'm like, what are we doing today? Are we killing somebody? Are we falling in love? And so I think that's why I always have a little mix of both of those. Like all of my thrillers still have just a bit of the romantic element. And even my rom-coms, I think, have that edge of your seat, hopefully, thriller feeling. And because I grew up sort of on both, and I do love both. And I love pretty much anything. I don't like straight up like horror because I will convince myself that that will happen to me and then I won't sleep for 3 days. So, but I like pretty much everything. I really do like everything, but I am definitely drawn more towards the thrillers.
So, I mean, this story in general, did you become very attached to Evie as it went on? It's when you have someone who's a grifter like she is, it always amazes me how you can become attached to them because when you read them, you realize that they don't really become attached to life. I mean, becoming attached to anything is pretty much how you end your career and end up in,
Right,
a Jane Doe in a ditch.
right.
Did you find yourself becoming attached to her and also her, sort of um, background friends? I mean, you mentioned Devin, there's George, and there's a few other people who pop
Hmm.
in and out. Her boss is this mysterious figure named Mr. Smith.
Yeah, right.
You had some
Yeah, no,
fun
yes,
asides about that too, by the way.
yes.
Yeah.
She was, yeah, it was easy to get attached to her. And, like you said, you can't really make friends in this kind of business, but it's like all she really wants is a family. Like she is trying to build this group that she can trust and her people and it's a made family, not sort of the family you're born into, but the family you choose, and which is very hard to do when you're in this illegal lifestyle and you're moving around and you're constantly changing who you are. And so who can you really trust? And so that is the main thing I think she struggles with is, not really being able to be who she is, but still wanting, craving those connections.
She has, I don't want to call it a foolish connection, but she does have this connection to the life that she left behind.
Mhm.
Um, she ended up in this particular career because she was really good at a thing that
Mhm.
helped her sort of cope with some things that were not good in her life,
Right.
and got her ahead, and she was recognized for it. So the thing that I found very interesting is for a character who spent so much time working on being other people, she did still have that connection to the person who she was when she was younger. And
Right.
I liked that, and I liked reading about younger Evie.
Right. Well, I liked, being able to show like it wasn't a choice. It was sort of like it was a desperation that put her to the life of crime. But then I also really liked the idea that she recognized, I'm good at this and I'm going to be unapologetically good at this. And I'm going to climb own corporate ladder, even if it's an illegal one, because I'm good at it and I'm okay being good at it. And that switch from desperation to owning it was kind of fun to get there with her.
So what about Ryan? He seems kind of you know, safe at first.
Hmm.
But he's definitely got his stuff going on too. Did you
Right.
always know who he was when you started writing this? Or did you
No,
discover him with
I
you?
discovered, I mean, at first he was, I'll say I changed the ending of this 7 different times in different ways, like who Mr. Smith ends up being changed a few times. Ryan's role changed several times and who he was. And again, that just comes from kind of getting to know and getting a little bit deeper. But, at first, Ryan was a little bit different, but I was like, okay, he's got to be an equal. He's got to be a match for her. And he cannot be just a total doormat, or else you just won't care at all, right? I mean, she's a strong woman, and even though he might not know it at first, he ends up, he ends up holding his own. So that, yeah, that sort of had to grow into that with him.
What about his friends? Because he has a group of friends. Only one of them, by the way, that we meet is male. He has a
Yes,
bunch of female friends, including
yes,
Rachel, who is extremely protective over him. And Evie immediately is like, ah, she's the one I need to win over if this is going to work.
right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, when you're in your mid to late 20s and you meet a group that have known each other from birth. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic. And, they've gone through school. There's going to be inside jokes you don't know. There's a shared history that you just cannot even begin to understand. And those are sort of very tough groups to crack. And, wherever you live in the world, people in a group like that, right? I mean, those tight knit little groups, and being a very, very outsider, I think that was a challenge for her, but I think that's what she liked about the job, with those kind of challenges.
Another thing I kind of was curious about is would you ever return to these characters? Do you have any like future? No.
No, and I'll tell you why. I have tried that. So my first two IA books were a duology, and I found and then my two rom-coms were companion. So same world, different main characters. I found I don't really want to go back to a world I've already created, because for me, the joy in writing is not knowing what that world is, not knowing what's gonna come, and discovering it as I'm writing it. When I have to go back a second time, a lot of that is gone. I mean, I know what this world is. I spent a lot of time there. So a lot of that mystery is gone, and it's not the same process for me. And I find it much, much harder to discover those fun things when I'm not surprised by the world.
That actually makes a lot of sense when you say it that way.
And I
So
love reading
yeah,
it. Don't get me wrong. I will read a 10 series book, whatever. I mean, like, I love it when I personally that's not my bag. Is not something I'm good at. I'm not good at that, going back in.
so what are some of your favorite books that have been coming out recently? What do you like to read? I know you mentioned
I,
that you like, I know what you mentioned what you like before, just in general, but like what is that like what do you like to read now?
well, so I have a whole stack of stuff I want to read. Obviously, last couple weeks have been a little bit crazy, so I've not had a lot of time to read. I have read a couple of things that will be coming out. So I read one book for a blurb. It was amazing. It's Kara Thomas's book called Lost to Dune Road. Was amazing. It was one of those I was like, let me start this. I'm got a lot to do, but let me start it. And I think I stayed up till 3 o'clock that morning and finished it almost in one sitting. Megan Miranda, it's a good friend of mine. El Cosmon's a good friend of mine. They both have books coming out that I, am looking forward to. And I just got was at Megan's last week, and I was there when her ARCs came in, her early copies came in for Daughter of Mine. So I got to snag one of those, and I'm loving, loving, loving it. It comes out in April. So yeah, so that's kind of where I am right now.
I was gonna say I'm waiting for that Megan Miranda book to come out too.
You're gonna love it. It's really good. It's really good.
Well, this was super, super fun. Again, this is like one of those books that you know, I want to ask you questions, I'm just worried that it's gonna give something away.
It is very hard to talk about because of that, and it does make it a challenge. So yes, that's what I've learned in those last couple of weeks when people ask me, and it's like a very cautious answer, but you know,
But at the same time, I mean, okay, so your book was it picked for Reese's book club?
it's a book club this January, Reese's book club pick, and then we were a main selection for book of the month. So it's been a wild ride.
So how do because I've always been curious about book of the month. How do they curate that? And you must have been super excited when you heard that, because I'm kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
a book of the month fangirl myself.
Yes. No, that was amazing. So we found out about Reese in October, which I was like blown away. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then they came, I think, in November with Book of the Month. And I was like, wait, I can have both. Like I didn't know you could get both things. And so that was like the cherry on top of the already amazing Sunday. So I have a great team at my publisher. I'm pretty sure they submitted me for everything. So I guess that's how you get on their radar to begin with. I don't know. That's sort of the magic that happens behind the curtain. I don't know. It was just other than I know I have a great team behind me. I'm sure that's how that happened.
Well, thank you so much. This was super, super fun. Please check out The First Lie Win. I almost
Yeah.
looked at my notes again and said the last lie, but it's not. It's
No,
the first.
that'll be the next book. Last Lie Wins. That'll be the next.
Except it's not, because you're not going to revisit.
I'm not going to read it. It'll be totally different. Totally new people. Yes.
Yes, totally new people, new lies.
Yes.
Are you looking to write another thriller anytime soon?
I am at the very beginning fun stage where I have an idea. It is still adult, still a thriller, and I'm sort of letting that marinate a bit, thinking about it. We'll see. I'm hopeful. It's, hopeful. Hopeful.
Are you writing any YA at the moment as well?
I'm not. I am no, and I don't do that. I don't. It's one or the other. Like I'm only working on one book at a time.
You can't be in two different headspaces, is
No.
what you're saying.
No. I am when I'm on one, and that is the one I'm on.
Well, again, First Lie Wins was a lot of fun. It is in Reese's Book Club, it's Book of the Month, and it's in your library, and
Yes.
we already have 1 million holds on it.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, for real. Like, it's definitely one of those books that's on the hold shelf constantly. So why don't you listeners put it on your hold shelf, or just pick it up from wherever you get your books?
Yes.
This was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My guest today was
Ashley Elston, author of First Lie Wins.
Author of First Lie Wins, and we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.